My name is Jessica Morgan. I'm 31 years old and 6 months ago, I gave my husband everything he wanted in our divorce. The house, the cars, his precious business. Everything. My lawyer thought I'd lost my mind. My friends staged an intervention. Even the judge looked at me like I needed a psychiatric evaluation. But I smiled and signed every paper he put in front of me. Because I knew something he didn't. Something his lawyer would discover exactly 48 hours after our divorce was finalized. Something that would turn his victory celebration into the worst nightmare of his life. This is the story of how my husband tried to erase me in one meeting, and how I let him bury himself instead. Let me take you back to the beginning. I met Ryan when I was 25. He was 28, charming, ambitious, and running a property management company his father had helped him start. 3 apartment buildings, about 60 units total. Nothing massive, but it was growing. I was working in corporate finance at the time, analyzing real estate portfolios for a large investment firm. I understood numbers, contracts, and risk assessment better than most people understood their own bank accounts. Ryan didn't know that about me. Not really. Because 6 months into dating, he asked me to quit my job and help him run his business. "We'll be a team," he said, his eyes bright with excitement. "You handle the books, the paperwork, all that boring stuff. I'll handle the properties and finding new deals. We'll build this together." I loved him, so I said yes. That was my first mistake. We got married a year later. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. His mother, Patricia, made it clear from day one that I wasn't quite good enough for her son. But Ryan assured me she'd warm up eventually. She never did. For the next 6 years, I ran every aspect of Ryan's business while he took all the credit. I managed the books, handled tenant complaints, coordinated repairs, filed the taxes, maintained the contracts. I worked 70-hour weeks while Ryan played golf with potential investors and took long lunches with his father. "Someone has to handle the business side," he'd say when I complained about the workload. "That's what you're good at." I'm the face of the company. The face of the company. That's what he called himself while I quietly kept everything running. And here's what I didn't realize until it was almost too late. While I was buried in paperwork and spreadsheets, Ryan was making decisions without me. Big decisions. Expensive decisions. Stupid decisions. He bought 2 more buildings using loans I didn't even know about until I saw the bank statements. He co-signed on his best friend Marcus's failed restaurant venture. He took out a line of credit against our home to invest in some cryptocurrency scheme his cousin promoted. Every time I discovered one of these disasters, he had the same response. "You worry too much," Ryan would say, dismissing my concerns with a wave. "You don't understand how business works. This is about taking calculated risks." Calculated risks. That's what he called gambling with money we didn't have. His mother made it worse. Patricia treated me like unpaid help rather than her daughter-in-law. She'd call at 8 in the morning asking me to handle some task for Ryan. She'd show up at our house unannounced and criticize everything from my cooking to my career choice to the fact that we didn't have children yet. "Ryan deserves a wife who supports him properly," she told me once, standing in my kitchen like she owned it. "Not someone who questions every decision he makes." I bit my tongue. I worked harder. I convinced myself that if I just managed the business better, if I just supported him more, things would improve. But they didn't improve. They got worse. 2 years ago, I started noticing serious problems in the books. The kind of problems that made my stomach drop every time I opened QuickBooks. Ryan's properties were hemorrhaging money. Maintenance costs he'd been deferring for years were coming due all at once. Tenants were leaving because he refused to make necessary repairs. The restaurants he'd invested in closed, losing every penny. The cryptocurrency crashed. The new buildings he'd bought were in terrible neighborhoods and stayed half empty. And the debt. Oh God, the debt. He owed $340,000 on the house we lived in. A house worth maybe $400,000 in a good market. The business had $480,000 in outstanding loans. There were 3 credit cards maxed out at a combined $85,000. A business line of credit tapped to its $150,000 limit. Personal loans from his father totaling another $60,000. Over $1 million in debt. And almost none of it was making money anymore. I tried to tell him. I sat him down with spreadsheets, with bank statements, with projections showing we'd be bankrupt within 18 months if we didn't make drastic changes. "You're being dramatic," he said, barely glancing at my carefully prepared documents. The business is fine. You just don't understand real estate. I had a degree in finance. I'd spent 5 years analyzing real estate portfolios professionally. But sure, I didn't understand real estate. That's when I started planning. I began documenting everything. Every loan, every debt, every bad decision. I made copies of every contract, every bank statement, every piece of financial evidence. I stored it all in a secure cloud account he didn't know existed. I also started separating my finances. Quietly, carefully. I opened a bank account in my name only. I started freelancing on the side. Financial consulting for small businesses. Helping them with exactly the kind of analysis Ryan refused to listen to. Every dollar I made from consulting went into that separate account. I stopped contributing my personal money to the business. When Ryan asked why, I told him I was trying to build our emergency savings. He nodded absently and went back to ignoring the financial crisis he'd created. Within a year, I had $47,000 in my private account. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Clean money, untouched by his disasters. I also did something else. Something that would become crucial later. I consulted with a forensic accountant. Not formally, just a friend helping a friend situation over coffee. I showed him the books. All of them, including the parts Ryan didn't know I'd found. Your husband's company is insolvent, the accountant told me quietly. If someone audited these books properly, they'd find at least $200,000 in questionable expenses that the IRS would definitely want to examine. Plus, some of these loans were taken out fraudulently. He signed your name on documents without your knowledge. My blood ran cold. What does that mean for me? If you're still married when this collapses, you're liable for half of everything. Maybe more, depending on how a judge sees your involvement in the business. But if you were divorced before the inevitable audit. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. That's when I knew what I had to do. I had to let Ryan have exactly what he wanted. The opportunity came 3 months ago. Ryan came home late one evening, poured himself a drink, and sat down across from me at the kitchen table. We need to talk, he said. My heart sank, but I kept my face neutral. Okay. I'm not happy anymore, he said simply. I don't think you are either. I think we should get divorced. Part of me had been expecting this. He'd been distant for months, coming home later and later, spending more time with Marcus and his other friends. I'd suspected there might be someone else, though I'd never found proof. If that's what you want, I said carefully. He looked relieved, almost eager. I want to make this easy, clean. We'll split everything fairly. Waited. I'll keep the business, he continued. Obviously. Built it. The properties, the assets, all of that stays with me. And the house. I think I should keep the house since the business is run from here. What about me? Yes. He had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable. You can take your car. And I'll give you, say, $50,000 as a settlement. That's fair, right? $50,000. After 6 years of marriage and 6 years of running his business while he drove it into the ground. I need to think about it, I said. Don't take too long, he said, standing up. I've already talked to a lawyer. We can have this done in 60 days if you don't fight it. He left the room. I sat there in the kitchen, my hands shaking. But not from sadness. From something else entirely. The next morning I called my own lawyer. Not the family lawyer Ryan and I had used before. A divorce attorney specializing in complex asset division. Her name was Rebecca Chen, and she came highly recommended. I need to understand something, I told her, laying out the financial situation. If my husband wants to keep everything, the business, the properties, the house, and I let him, what happens to the debt? Rebecca looked at the documents I'd brought. Her eyes widened as she read through the numbers. If he takes sole ownership of the business and properties, he takes sole responsibility for the associated debt, she said slowly. Any loans tied to those assets transfer entirely to him. You'd be released from liability, even though some of it was accumulated during the marriage. If it's part of the business assets he's claiming, yes. Especially if you can prove you weren't involved in taking out those loans or making those business decisions. She looked at me carefully. Why do I get the feeling you already knew that? Smiled. I want to give him everything he's asking for. The business, the properties, the house. All of it. Ms. Morgan, that's not advisable. You're entitled to. I know what I'm entitled to, I interrupted. But I also know what I'm giving him. Can you make this happen? Rebecca was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. Yes. But I need you to understand that once this is done, you can't undo it. I understand perfectly. Over the next week, Ryan's lawyer sent over the divorce proposal. It was even more lopsided than I'd expected. Ryan would keep the business, all 5 properties, the house, both cars, though he'd generously let me keep my Honda, and 100% of the business assets. I would get $50,000 and whatever was in my personal bank account. The debt wasn't mentioned. Not specifically. It was just rolled into the business assets he'd be keeping. Rebecca called me after reviewing it. Jessica, I need to tell you one more time. This is a terrible deal by conventional standards. You're walking away from potentially hundreds of thousands in equity. Rebecca, I said calmly, I'm walking away from over $1 million in debt that's about to explode. I know exactly what I'm doing. There was a pause. Does he know about the real state of the business? He knows there are some problems. He doesn't know how bad they are. He certainly doesn't know about the IRS audit that's going to be triggered when some of those loans default. And when is that likely to happen? Based on the payment schedules I've seen, about 48 hours after our divorce is finalized. Rebecca laughed. Actually laughed. You're sure about this? I'm sure. Then let's do it. We scheduled the court date for 2 weeks later. In that time, Ryan was already acting like a free man. He went out with Marcus constantly. His mother called me 3 times to tell me how disappointed she was that I'd given up on her son. He's better off without you anyway, Patricia said during our last conversation. You never really supported his dreams. I let her talk. There was no point in arguing. The day before the court hearing, Ryan sat me down one final time. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this, he said. I was worried you'd try to take half of everything. I don't want to fight, I said honestly. Good. That's good. He smiled. You know, we had some good times. But this is the right decision for both of us. He nodded. It really is. The next morning we met at the courthouse. Ryan looked confident, almost smug, as he sat at his table with his lawyer. His mother was there too, sitting in the gallery with that satisfied expression she wore whenever she thought I was being put in my place. My lawyer had asked me 3 times if I was certain. I said yes each time. The judge reviewed our agreement. It was a simple hearing. Uncontested divorce, clear asset division, no children involved. Ms. Morgan, the judge said, looking at me over his reading glasses, I have to tell you that this settlement seems extremely unbalanced in Mr. Morgan's favor. You're waiving rights to significant marital assets. Are you certain you want to proceed? I'm certain, Your Honor, I said clearly. Have you been coerced or pressured in any way? No, Your Honor. This is my decision. He looked skeptical but nodded. Very well. Mr. Morgan, you're agreeing to take full ownership of the business entity Morgan Property Management, including all assets, properties, and associated financial obligations. Yes, Your Honor, Ryan said quickly. All loans, debts, and liabilities associated with these properties transfer entirely to you as sole owner? Yes, Your Honor. The judge signed the papers. Your divorce is finalized. Assets are divided as agreed. Ryan's mother actually applauded. Quietly, but I heard it. Ryan shook his lawyer's hand, looking like he'd won the lottery. As we left the courtroom, he actually smiled at me. No hard feelings, he said. None at all, I replied. Rebecca walked with me to my car. When? She asked quietly. Check my phone. If my timeline is right, the first loan payment is due tomorrow. The one that's set to auto-draft from the business account. The account that doesn't have nearly enough to cover it. And that triggers a cascade. One missed payment, then another. The bank will notice. They'll audit the loans. They'll find the irregularities. They'll report to the IRS. Everything falls apart from there. She smiled. You're terrifying, you know that. I'm practical, I said. There's a difference. 48 hours later my phone rang. Unknown number. Jessica. Ryan's voice was panicked. I need your help. Something's wrong with the business accounts. The bank is saying there's some kind of error. I'm sorry, Ryan, I said calmly. But I'm no longer involved with your business. That's what the divorce settlement specified. You should probably call your accountant. My accountant is saying there are problems. Serious problems. He's talking about audits and IRS investigations and... Jessica, did you know about this? Know about what? The debt. The actual amount of debt. He's saying the business is underwater by over $1 million. That does sound serious, I said. But again, that's your business now. Not mine. You did the books. You had to have known. I tried to tell you multiple times that there were financial problems. You said I was being dramatic. You said I didn't understand real estate. Remember. Silence. Ryan, I have to go. I'm starting a new consulting job next week and I need to prepare. Good luck with everything. Hung up. He called 17 more times that day. I blocked his number. Over the next 2 weeks, I heard through mutual friends what was happening. The bank had frozen the business accounts pending an investigation. The IRS had opened an audit into 3 years of business taxes. His father, who'd co-signed on some of the loans, was furious and threatening to sue Ryan for fraud. Marcus, whose restaurant debts Ryan had guaranteed, was also lawyering up. The house went into foreclosure proceedings. The properties started bleeding more money as tenants left, and Ryan couldn't afford even basic maintenance. His mother called me. I didn't block her number because I wanted to hear this. You knew, Patricia said, her voice shaking with rage. You knew the business was failing and you didn't tell him. I told him multiple times, Patricia. He chose not to listen. He said I didn't understand business. You set him up. You trapped him. I gave him exactly what he asked for, I said calmly. He wanted the business. He wanted the properties. He wanted to be free of me. He got all 3. You're vindictive and cruel. No, Patricia. I'm practical. Your son built a house of cards and then blamed me when I pointed out it would collapse. All I did was stop holding it up. She sputtered. This isn't over. Yes, I said firmly. It is. Don't call me again. I blocked her number too. 6 months later, I'm living in a modest apartment, working as a freelance financial consultant for small businesses. I help them avoid the exact mistakes Ryan made. I help them understand their numbers, manage their risk, and build sustainable growth. I make good money. My savings account is growing. I'm not rich, but I'm stable, independent, and completely debt-free. Ryan. Last I heard, he'd declared bankruptcy. The business folded completely. He lost the house, the properties, everything. He's living with his mother, working at his father's company for a salary instead of running his own empire. The IRS audit resulted in about $80,000 in back taxes and penalties. His father is suing him for the loan money. Marcus is suing him for the restaurant debts. And I'm free. Completely, totally free. Sometimes people ask me if I feel guilty. If I regret giving him so much in the divorce. You don't. Because here's what I learned. You can't save someone who refuses to acknowledge they need saving. You can't fix someone's problems when they won't admit the problems exist. Ryan wanted to be the hero of his own story. He wanted the empire, the success, the glory. He wanted me gone because I kept pointing out the cracks in his foundation. So I let him have exactly what he wanted. I let him be the sole owner of his empire. I just knew that empire was about to burn down. My lawyer once asked me if I planned this from the beginning, or if I just got lucky with the timing. Honestly, a little of both. I didn't create Ryan's problems. I didn't force him to make bad decisions or take out risky loans or ignore the warning signs. I didn't make him treat me like free labor or dismiss my expertise or push me out of his life. I just stopped protecting him from the consequences of his own choices. And when he asked for a divorce and demanded everything, I simply gave him what he asked for. His victory, his assets, his debt, his disaster, all of it. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't fighting for what you think you deserve. Sometimes it's letting someone have exactly what they want, knowing it's going to destroy them. I didn't lose my mind when I signed those papers. I lost the deadweight that was dragging me under. Now, when I think about that day in court, I remember the judge's skeptical expression. I remember Ryan's smug smile. I remember his mother's quiet applause. And I remember thinking, you have no idea what you just celebrated. 2 days later they did. My name is Jessica Morgan. I'm 31 years old. And I gave my husband everything in our divorce. The house, cars, the business, the debt, collapse, the consequences, everything. And I've never been happier in my life.